Hello, fellow geeks. Welcome to your favorite football podcast. Wait. This isn't a football podcast, is it, Aman? But it looks like a football podcast today because I, Ayush Alavadi, am wearing a Liverpool red, and Aman Shet, my best friend of all time, is wearing his Manchester United colours all the way from LA. And today, Aman, we will not fight. This is not Google versus Apple. This is not OnePlus versus Samsung. This is, well, both of us happy with the way the Premier League season has panned out and just wrapped up this weekend. But we're also happy, well, of course, that we've both qualified for Europe, but we're also happy because Google, I think, Aman, has been tuning in to the Let's Take About It podcast. What do you think?
They have been, and it's funny because they are doing things that we have been telling them to do since a long time. So I don't know, man. They've got their guys out there who are trying to, scanter through the internet, trying to find the geekiest geek out there, telling them what to do, and they've listened and they heard and they're doing it.
Absolutely, Aman. I think that there was some things that we've said. I think that there was one episode which we didn't promote enough in terms of promoting it, but
Yep.
I think we should with the Google getting hardware so wrong. But we also confessed in that particular video that Aman and I are massive fans of what Google and its potential is all about. And then in a previous one where we spoke about smartwatches and wearables, I think Aman and I made it very clear, and this is something which a lot of people wrote back to us about, which is that all the smartwatch manufacturers should beware that Google is coming.
So, like we said, Google is going at the smartwatch with all its might. And when Google goes at it with all its might, everyone's got to listen. And what they did this time is they took their long standing partnership with Samsung because we have to admit it that our Samsung's smartwatches are arguably the most popular Android watches. So it only made sense for Google to go in and say let's team up and let's take the best of Tizen and the best of Google and merge it. So what they're gonna do is, well, they also bought Fitbit for those of you who forgot that. So now they've got Fitbit, Wear OS, and Tizen, three of, I would say, the best non-Apple smartwatch software, hardware, everything, whatever you want to say. And they've
Yeah.
gone in and now they're going to combine it and come up with their new sort of updated Wear OS, which I think Apple's going to have to keep their eyes open on this one because this is basically everyone that Apple competes against saying we're going to team up and try and knock you off your perch. So let's it's gonna be an interesting few months coming ahead. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's gonna be hardware launches that Google will be doing in course of the year, but
Yeah.
it's gonna definitely it's gonna make some waves.
It's going to make some waves, and this is the coming together of these three indirect rivals to the Apple Watch. I mean, Google had so many options out there which Android Wear watch you should take, but obviously the Pixel Watch isn't out yet. God knows what that would be like if it ever does come out. But I think they're testing the waters with the next Galaxy smartwatch because the Galaxy smartwatch, Aman and I have discussed this before, has a market of its own. So, well, no matter what Apple does with the next rendition of the Series 7 or whatever they're going to call it, okay, it might have, well, flat edges. It doesn't seem revolutionary yet because they're going to pop in a few more sensors. With that might of Fitbit, Google, and Samsung, this is exactly what we predicted. Samsung wasn't part of our prediction, let's be honest there, because we thought Samsung will also have to be watching out for what Google has. But this is a masterstroke. It's the Justice League of wearables getting together.
Yep.
But we will discuss this in detail and what this partnership really entails. The other things that stood out for me, Aman, at Google I/O, this is for those of you who are not aware of what the I/O is all about. It's a very tech geek specific. Even the journalists being called out there were in this open air conference at Mountain View for Google, and Sundar Pichai obviously kicked off the day's proceedings. Spoke about a number of things, and some of it might get too geeky for you, and we don't have time to cover all of them. But let's do this way, Aman. I'll tell you two things that really stood out for me, and you tell me two that work for you. For the first bit, I want to discuss, well, one thing that really caught my eye, which was the Google Maps update. Now, I'm not going to go in any specific order, but I thought the Google Maps update was really cool. I think the fact that you can now capitalize on Google's Maps, well, expertise, which Apple and the others clearly don't have, and Google with, I think, with Waze, the one guy who did it right in some regions bought that company as well, right?
Yep.
So over the years, we've seen Google Maps get better and more precise. Also, the announcement that there are 3 billion Android devices active around the world. Now, that scares you in terms
Yep.
of pure numbers, right? Everyone's talking about the next billion or Facebook having a billion users or whatever. But this is 3 billion Android devices. Now you know where the advertising money comes from those 3 billion devices. And I think in terms of getting maps right, tomorrow if you're at university or we're at a shopping complex and we want to go and pick up the next Manchester United jersey or the Liverpool jersey, and we know it's available at a particular store, well, then we're sorted now. Because if you're going there for the first time, your Google Maps is going to tell you left, right, 2 meters here. So it's a little bit like an air tag sort of navigation now within Google
Right.
Maps. I know it sounds weird, but that's one thing. And I really think the other thing that stood out, and here the visual you're going to paste is going to change your mind, because no matter what words I use, I'm not going to do it justice. The second thing that caught my eye was Project Starline. What is Project Starline? Well, this is something that Sundar Pichai said that Google's been working on in its own office for a while now, but he wanted to give us a sneak peek of how it works. It was a well promoted video, pretty much like how Apple had done Center Stage a few weeks ago. And basically, it's using 3D imaging and light field imaging patterns and creating a scenario by mapping our faces where Aman and I, sitting so many thousand miles away, won't feel like we are, because it creates that depth where it would get all our angles and all our features and make it more prominent. Aman, that was mind blowing, because honestly,
Yep.
no one out there but Google could announce something like this.
I can put it in, add one layer of explanation to what you just said, right? You can imagine it being they're going to use high definition, really high end cameras. And what the camera is going to do is it's going to use, it's actually very similar to the way Face ID works, right? Because it has a depth sensor. So a camera is going to create a sort of 3D model of your sort of upper torso, right? And then that's that's sort of, it's not image, it's a 3D model. And then the camera obviously also does what a camera does, which captures images, and then it takes those images and projects it onto this three-dimensional model. So when you start moving, for instance, like I'm doing, you're going to start getting a lot more clarity and definition in terms of lighting and shadows in, the parts of your body that are not in the same plane, which is pretty much everything, right? We aren't flat. So I think it's really cool, and I think it's and I mean their entire I/O was pretty much about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and it clearly seems like Google is going, all in, or there's this major push in their development of the company
Yeah,
with machine learning, which I think is fascinating for the
you're
future
right.
world. It's taking VR and turning it on its head, right? Because the entire issue with VR is, why the hell do I need to wear this giant looking headset that firstly makes my head ache, to experience that space. It's cool and it's awesome, and I don't mind doing it for a few minutes. But I could imagine us recording this podcast in VR, and by the end of it, we would both be taking Advils just because we want the headache to go. So if
Yeah.
if if this is like almost like taking the experience that sort of VR gives you, but giving it to you in an AR experience, which I think is awesome. And for those of you guys who don't know VR and AR, VR is virtual reality and AR is augmented reality. It's exciting times for sure.
What were the other two things that stood out for you? Because I know these were things you would have found fascinating as well, but as an architect, as someone who understands design and urban design and things like that,
Yeah, absolutely, Ayush. As a designer, as an architect, the thing that stood out to me the most was Material U, and this has been something that Google's been developing, I think, since the start of the Pixel device, right, or the Pixel range of phones, and they've been going into all these. They've called it many things over times, but it's this very sort of elegant, clean, minimalistic approach to design that they've taken. And, one thing as designers that we always struggle with is colors, right? Because it's part of that user interface, and you need to appeal to the person who is using it. And the best way to do that is well, the only way to do that is with colors and animations and things like that. And you don't realize how important having the correct contrasting colors, and how much of a difference that makes to the eye. Like you would be surprised. So Material You was amazing because the amount of time that goes into actually getting those color schemes correct, and now they've gone and taken artificial intelligence and machine learning and added it. I think that is so awesome. Like you can just put an image and the software is going to develop a color palette for you. I mean, that's cool. And then the simple things, like I know he mentioned about when you unlock the phone, right? So
Yeah.
when you press the lock button on the right, it sort of lights up from the right side and onto the rest of the screen. Also,
The
when you unlock
animations, yeah.
the animation, and when you just tap to wake, it goes from bottom up. I mean, those are simple things that you don't. It doesn't seem like much, but when you actually start using it, it has a very soft and elegant feel
You're right,
to your
Aman.
experience.
And I've trusted you all my life every time when it comes to these kinds of design aesthetic or color palettes and stuff. And it's such a fine balance that you need to strike, because if you go overboard, it can get tacky, like sometimes how Samsung was, how the Chinese guys worked with Android. And Apple keeps it so simple that it's consistent, you like it, the display gets better, it gets snappier every year, but it's not something that excites you when the phone comes on. You expect
No,
consistency. That is what was overdue with Android. And Apple catches up every 3 or 4 years. And I'm sure Apple's going to go to these
right.
lovely pop colors and color palettes that you're talking about in a few years. But at this point, when I switch on my iPhone, I was telling someone, one of the viewers wrote to me and they said, should we move over from Android after 10 years of Android? And I said, can I be honest with you? iOS is great. Again, the ecosystem is great. But when you unlock this phone, it's a little overrated in terms of an experience. It's seamless, it's smooth, but what Google can do if they optimize it is just refreshing. Like it feels like a new realm that has opened up to you. And I think that's what you're talking
Absolutely.
about. Customization has been taken again to the next level by Google, and
And
that's what we expect.
and we've always known, right? Like Android has always been about customization, and Apple has always been about clean, simple, consistent
Yeah.
consistency. So, but the one thing that I think that was the major shift or the major change with Apple was like they were like dark mode, right? Everything is grayed out and you have these blacks. And honestly, that I really like it, and that's how I have all my Apple devices. It's always on dark mode or whatever it's called. But this is something that's really interesting because I can now pretty much have a new, almost like a theme, right? Every time I change an image or change my wallpaper, which I don't do much, but I know there are people who like doing that and like having, you know, little changes to the way they use their phone. And obviously, Apple gave that with iOS 14. You have the widgets, and there's a ton of like customization options available, but it's all third party. Nothing of that comes with Apple's software when you download it or when you update it.
Yeah.
So Apple probably, as you said it, every 2 or 3 years they do the major refresh, and we know they're going to do that with the iPad OS very soon. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe not this year, but next year's iPhone will come with a brand new sort of user interface. But so Material You was exciting. One of the things that was really exciting to me. The other one, which, you know, 2020 and 2021 have taught us a lot of things. The world is not as pleasant as we've sometimes we're led to believe it is, and a major part of that has to do with sort of the racial abuse, and it's even ongoing in the sport that we love, right? Like such a big it's a big issue, and I guess
You're
this
right.
is Google's sort of answer, saying that with software this is something we can do. And they're I don't even know, they're sort of computational photography, the software that has the software update in their camera app is for the camera to sort of understand, I guess, skin color a little better, right? Especially for people of color like you and I. And other nationalities in the world.
I'm gonna understand my curly hair now, Aman. I believe they're gonna work
Yes.
out curly hair and our brown skin. So I think for most of us people of color, I think it's much needed. Also, we've seen how a lot of the Google-based, I mean, Android-based phones, Aman, even the Chinese manufacturers, they tend to beautify you a lot.
Yes.
So I mean, now OnePlus, perhaps with the Hasselblad partnership, improved their color science a bit, but it still beautifies you. Take an iPhone shot, and you don't even need to go in RAW mode, and you'll feel like a Samsung or the others, the Android guys are using some sort of
Yeah, yeah.
computational algorithm which makes you a little prettier, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's why when it comes to cameras on Android phones, it's always been Google, the Google phone and the Google camera, even without its eight sensors or five sensors or whatever the most popular thing is. They just do it their own way and they've always done it right and they've always
Yeah.
got some of the best results, right? Like we say that they're comparable to the highest iPhone photo you can get. So
Any
that's
day,
definitely
any day.
something. Kudos to Google on this one. I think it's very important in the world that we currently live in. But yeah, so I think there were a lot of other things that Google spoke about, which yeah, it's fun. Some of it is gimmicky, but I think a lot of this will be a lot more clarified in the coming months when they start launching their devices.
Okay, top gimmick for you, very quickly. The top gimmick announced at Google I/O.
Uh, I'd say the Photos app. I mean,
Yeah, I
it
think
is
that was
what
a
it
little
is.
overrated. Yeah, yeah. I think
I
those
think
little
it's
4 trillion photos. My heart, Aman, skipped a beat that they have 4 trillion photos of us backed up on Google Photos. Like, what are they doing with them? Because I don't know what kind of privacy tracking is happening over there.
they
And I
haven't made
also,
themselves clear on the privacy issue that we spoke so passionately about a few episodes back.
yeah, they haven't. I mean, that was one big miss for me because when the journalists questioned them later, I think some of the Google executives said, "We're working on it, but we don't have an answer to app tracking yet."
Yeah.
But what I liked about it is I think it was an Indian dude. I can't remember what his name was, unfortunately, but he said, I think he told the guys at Verge, and at Verge for sure, he told the editor of
Yeah.
Verge that we are working on it, but look, we are an advertising company. That's pretty much episodes or a couple of
Yep.
podcast episodes
Yep.
ago for us saying they have to accept it. Look, but that's where the money comes in, and that's their business, or in Indian terms, that's their
Right.
dhanda, right? Because if that's where their money's coming from, then they're gonna have a tough time.
Yeah, there's one thing I think I'm gonna take this episode to talk about just because it bugs me, right? Like I live in LA. LA is car city. You don't walk, you don't take the tube. There is no tube. You drive everywhere you go, and so Google Maps is a big part of my everyday life, right? At least when I'm going to a new place or when I'm stuck in traffic and I want to find the quickest route to get somewhere. So, one thing that has always bugged me about Google Maps, and I keep wondering when they're going to get an update for this, and they still haven't, even though they come out with all these cool things inside, navigation inside a mall, which, yeah, it's fun and it's awesome, but like, okay, the maps is for me all about getting to a place in the most efficient way, and it keeps bugging me because when I navigate to a mall or to a shop or anything, it'll take me. It won't take me to the correct side of the street every time. There's so many times that I go and I'm on the opposite side of the street, and then there's no U-turn, or if I need to take a round to get on the right side, like I can do that, but I would love if Google Maps actually just took me to the right side of the street. Or if
Yeah.
there was an option where I can say, take me to the nearest parking lot. Like, I feel like they've forgotten the parts of Google Maps with what Maps was for navigating through cars.
What is that one thing that, well, at least we guys excited about? And I think Aman will agree with me. It was all the talk about Wear OS, right? Those
Yep.
Apple Watches we're wearing right now. I think the heart rate sensor on them is going through the roof because they are stressed, Aman. They would be team at Apple would be worried about what the hell is happening at Google because if they saw this coming, I would be worried that I haven't come out with a circular dial. I haven't come with a circular watch. I would be
Right.
worried that if I think that my activity or fitness well, UI on the application is so sharp and cutting edge, and my health application is great, I'd be worried because Fitbit is here. I'd be worried in terms of accuracy because, well, they're here as well. In terms of quality and how is here, Samsung. Saying it again, Google, and, well, of course, Fitbit come together to make, call it Wear OS. I'm going to call it Super OS. All right, that's what I want to call it for myself. It is an amalgamation. If these guys can get it right, Aman, unfortunately there'll be egos involved. The good thing is Google's bought Fitbit, so that's pretty much managed.
Yep.
But this is just abnormal. Now let's think about it. Is perhaps one of the best apps. Now, forget the
Yep.
class action lawsuits and the accuracy issues that every wearable company has, but Fitbit's app is perhaps the cleanest app that always. Google, in machine learning and AI, is perhaps the far most advanced in terms of their R&D. They've been putting money into it for years. The kind of data that they've tracked from you, they have the best analysis of
Yeah.
when
Mm-hmm.
when your heart rate is perhaps going to abnormal levels, when you're perhaps climbing something in Lonavala or walking up a street in San Francisco. They know those things because their location tracking is so good as well, right? Apple doesn't have that at this point. Um, you know, I really think, Aman, that then if you put it together with Samsung's gorgeous looking watch faces, and then if you can optimize the battery of Wear OS, because it's the first time that they're sitting down together saying, let's make it
I
fair.
think them focusing on battery is really important. I understand the fact why that's happening because we have always on displays. And if you don't want that, you can turn it off and you'll save battery or get the SE and you'll
How
not get
much?
that
How
feature
much
as
battery
well.
would you save?
But how
How much
much
battery?
exactly? Because I had the Watch Series 3 before this, and when I first bought it, it lasted for 2 days, but I think after a year, I had to charge it every day because I didn't want the situation where it would go off in the middle of the day. So I think this is really critical that they talk about or they address this battery issue because the one thing that I guess Android watches have that are going for them is all of them perform much better on battery life. So this is going to be something that's important. And we all know Fitbit's battery life is next level. They have optimized it to, you know, work, I think weeks almost. But one thing I thought about while you were talking about the watches and the faces, and
Mm.
maybe Apple can come up with having two options for a watch, like have a circular dial and your square, rounded square dial. Because the one thing that Android has is they have options. They have a lot of options. And I understand Apple's logic and Apple's funda is to be
Philosophy, yeah.
consistent. Their philosophy is consistency, and they'll always deliver a high performing product no matter what. And I get that, but they've expanded their iPhone line over the last few years to go from being a single phone that was all they did to now a range of devices, a range of phones, a range of iPads, a range of computers. They are expanding because they understand this competition. And I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see, and they've expanded it in the watch as well because they have the SE and they have the Series 6. But I wouldn't be surprised if they expanded it in the fact that there's a circular face or a circular dial and a square dial option because I think that's something that a lot of people love is the circular dial. And I'm okay either way. I wouldn't necessarily say one is better than the other, but at the end of the day, this is something so subjective and so personal because you're going to wear it every single day. People wear it almost 24 hours, or at least other than the time that you're charging.
I want to spin a conspiracy theory while you were telling me that, and I was hoping you didn't steal this one from me because I've never discussed this with you. But if you were Apple, obviously, if you took this moral high road and you said, hey, we can do this, we can take you guys on, that's one approach. The other approach is, look, Apple is this mega company, right? They're still one of the biggest tech companies, one of the biggest companies in the world. Just very quickly checking what is the net worth for a company like Garmin. And it seems like it's somewhere between 18 to 22 billion dollars. And I just thought,
Okay.
you know,
Pocket
given
change for
Garmin's
Apple.
pocket change for Apple, get in there. They use GLONASS and some satellites for
Mm-hmm.
the most amazing, well, location tracking.
The
You don't
best
even need to use
location you can
Google
get.
anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they use technologies which are so much better. They have heart rate sensors, which I think are more accurate and better for endurance sports than Fitbit. Google is is irrelevant. Samsung is not better than the Apple Watch. We know that for sure.
No.
And you bring in Garmin's health and fitness expertise. They've done it before with Beats. They've done it before with other companies that they've acquired. They're probably going to dial very soon. If I'm someone, I'm very certain. Do you want this in writing? 3 months, in the last 3 to 6 months, Apple in some boardroom, some dude has suggested something as audacious as what I'm telling you right now. And I
100%.
can guarantee you. And it makes so much sense because Garmin is one company which has managed to, with limited PR and branding, kill Fitbit when, in terms of the viewer, in terms of the users who are nuanced and who understand how important that is
I
in
mean,
terms of metrics.
yeah, if you think about it, before we had Google Maps and smartphones, when we rented a car, you always paid extra for your Garmin navigation
Yeah. So,
device. It's the best of the best.
and by the way, I was just, they were always worth more than 14 billion. But there's actually, and I swear to God, this first time I'm reading this while I'm talking to you, a Fortune piece saying Garmin CEOs quotes on fending off Apple and Google. This is from April last year, and Cliff Pemble is his name, and
Mm-hmm.
he says he leads a tech company worth more than 14 billion. I think that valuation's gone up with people buying more wearables in the last 1 year. They've been killing it since you said the navigational devices since the year 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Adios Fitbit. I have a way better, cleaner UI anyways. I control the Apple ecosystem. Just bring in Garmin. You're bringing in a market of people who will then be restricted to iOS as well if you suddenly change the whole thing. And
Tim,
people will migrate. You will be taking, I know it's a small dent, but you'll be taking a chunk of the Garmin Android guys because
yeah, for sure.
they own a smartphone because of Garmin.
One of the big reasons why I feel like I would never leave iOS, and even though I've said it many times that I would go back to Android if Google got their act together, but I love the watch. It's actually it's my favorite Apple product with the iPad. So it's a reason why I would stick to it. So you're absolutely right there. People love their wearables. So if you if and Tim Cook, if you're listening, we said it first. Listen to us. We know what we're talking. Go and buy Garmin, or at least come up with an interesting collaborative way where you can, benefit from their products, add it to yours, get more customers, get more clients, and really take on this new Justice League of of wearables that's been formed by
Words
Google,
and
Fitbit, and
get your little Avengers going yourself,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I think these are interesting things, yeah, because honestly, as a customer, and you don't have to be a geek for this. Like so many people call me up saying, "Hey, yeah, which smartwatch should I buy? Which wearable?" There are some really cool brands in India also doing cool stuff with wearables. I've spoken to some of them, and they're doing cool things. So this market is booming, right? We're selling millions in India. Every guy wants it. When they see Aman wearing an Apple Watch on the Let's Talk About a podcast, there's the people want to buy another one, but they won't want to spend 40, 50,000 rupees. So maybe they'll pick up something from India. There's so many clones coming in from China which are branded in India. So I think very exciting place to be. The Android 12 update, the beta is out, but I think the real update in terms of the phones comes in with the Pixel and the other
Yes.
launches. And the
Mm-hmm.
Samsung Galaxy smartwatch will be the next watch to really look out for, unless Google does something special and around the same time launches a Pixel watch, which I
Pixel
don't think
Watch.
they'll do. They must be having some sort of legal agreements with Samsung to make sure that, because they spoke about the Galaxy as their
Mm-hmm.
flagship device. It
Yeah.
was strange to attend a Google conference talking about how the Samsung Galaxy smartwatch is the best shit ever. Like,
Maybe they listened to us when we said that the Nexus 5, which was made by LG, was the best smartphone they ever made. So I think they have listened to us, or they're
I think they
basically
have.
getting their act together, because this is it's I mean, we've been saying this, well, we said it on the podcast recently, but we've been saying it for years. We've been talking about this for years. So
No, they have.
I
It's
don't know what
interesting.
took them that long.
That's good. It's kind of exciting for me, and I cannot wait to see YouTube reviewers doing their typical stuff where they've got this Google super watch, whichever hardware manufacturer does it. But let's just say it's a Google
Super
Justice League
Watch.
watch, and then the Avengers, Apple and Garmin, or Apple and maybe someone else who comes in over there. who really wants to. Who knows? Maybe the guys at I don't know if that's the best one in terms of expertise, but maybe the guys at TicWatch want to do something special with Apple because even they've sort of cracked it, and
Yeah.
maybe Apple wants to understand where to. But I think Garmin is the smart one with the way they use GPS. I think that's the way to go, and I think Apple should be listening to us right now. And remember, I'm gonna clip this out so that when it actually does happen, we can
We'll play
shout
it.
out from the rooftops.
Absolutely. No, you're right there. Garmin is probably the way to go for Apple because if you think about it, it's the only thing that I would say is sort of lacking on our watches when it comes to some of the monitors, and they've got fitness right because with Fitness Plus and all of the different inbuilt workouts, that's on a good place. But now imagine that getting better with Garmin's features. So yeah, let's get the Avengers going out here, and we'll really have a good battle on our hands.
That might be an episode by itself. Let's actually plant this rumor so that people actually start talking about it. And better still, also for those of you who want to write into us, obviously it's Let's Tech Podcast at gmail.com. Aman drops in our Instagram handles there. Keep giving us all your suggestions and all the things that you like and don't like and things you want us to cover. The last episode is something that we're gonna talk about and perhaps do a part two. We spoke to Priyankar Balegai, the man who understands EV. Kind of interesting because we did talk about things that planned. And he was kind of a tech geek, so it was good fun to do that as well. So you should tune into that. If you're on Spotify, it's the previous episode. On YouTube, you'll find it as well. And everywhere else, it'll be right below. But Aman, this one's been fun. I think we can both say cheers to each other and not fight today because our podcast is working and Liverpool and Manchester United will be playing in the Champions League.
Absolutely. It's been a good day, a good weekend, a good end to the season for our respective teams. I know a lot of you guys might be wondering how can a United fan and a Liverpool fan be best of friends, but we made it work and we will always make it work. So, on that note, all of you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe, share, comment, reach out to us, do the usual, and have a great rest of your day. And Ayush, time to bed. Don't get drunk, and we'll catch you very soon.